So we heard a couple months back, like a month or two back, that John Cryer was coming to Supergirl this season as Lex Luthor, one of Superman's most famous villain. And we didn't know when he was showing up, but then we found out it was going to be episode 15, which is next week's episode. So this Sunday coming, that episode is when he's showing up. And we know from the trailer that was released before even episode 14. That trailer was released, showing us all about him, and I can't wait. Um, Lex Luthor is one of the only Superman villains that we haven't, like the only big Superman villain that we haven't seen in the Arrowverse yet. We've been hearing about him constantly all the way back since Supergirl season 1. You know, we've been hearing that he's been in prison for years, that he's tangled with Superman many times in this universe. And with Superman now off-world on Argo, I think it's clear which child of Krypton he's coming for, or he's targeting. Uh, so yeah, Lex Luthor has been one of the staples of DC since the 1940s. When people talk about DC's villains, Lex is always one of the first ones on that list. He's always one of the masterminds behind whatever supervillain society is currently starting up, and he's not just one of the smartest characters in DC Comics, but he's also, by a great deal, one of the most dangerous. Lex Luthor has been in live action numerous times over the last few decades. Most recently, he was in the DCEU, played by Jesse Eisenberg, which he was in Batman v Superman, and then at the very end of Justice League. Not my favorite interpretation of Lex Luthor, but at the same time, apparently it's supposed to be Lex's son, not the traditional Lex Luthor. And he was in another CW show, Smallville, played by Michael Rosenbaum, which is one of my favorite interpretations of the character ever, and his interpretation of Lex Luthor was what shot him to my top 10 list of DC supervillains. This also isn't John Cryer's first time tangling with Superman-related media, or even Luthor-related media. Cryer was in Superman 4, The Quest for Peace, underrated movie, don't let anybody tell you otherwise, as Lex Luthor's nephew, Lenny. So Lex first appeared in Action Comics issue 23 from April 1940. This version of Lex Luthor isn't canon to normal DC Comics anymore because all of the characters from that era were actually on Earth 2 and not on Earth 1. But so that's 23 Superman related issues without any hint of a Luthor or the Luthor name. Cal really had no idea how good he had it for those 2 years. Lex is generally one of the world's richest people, operating from his Skyline buildings in Metropolis, which is his Luthor Corp building, or his Lex Corp building is normally right beside the Daily Planet. And he was always kind of thinking up ways to kill Kryptonians. If the trailer is any hint, it looks like Supergirl's version of the character has learnt in the past how fatal a red sun can be to a Kryptonian, and thus this is what he's using to take away Kara's powers or to deal some damage to her. It makes me wonder if how Supergirl episode 14 ended with James getting shot has any ties to Luthor getting out. Due to the nature of last episode, I think it's more likely than not someone to do with Agent Liberty or the Children of Liberty is the one who shot him, since he was taking all the pictures and that. But at the same time, I would love to think that Jimmy was instrumental in helping Clark and Lois take down Lex, and result in send him to prison. And maybe Lex hired somebody to get rid of James so that he won't have to worry about the Daily Planet's star photographer when he gets out. During Luthor's first appearances in comics, he was only referred to as Luthor, and not Lex. This is pretty common in OG comics for characters, as even Peter Parker in Marvel was often referred to as Peter Palmer rather than Peter Parker, as because the character was so new, Stan Lee kind of forgot the names of the characters he was using at first, and it wasn't until much later on, when the characters started to become popular, that they really hammered down on their exact details. In his original appearance, Lex resided in a flying city, and he was trying to start a war between two European nations. Clark and Lois get involved, Lois is kidnapped, and Superman intervenes to rescue her, resulting in the first face-off between the titular two characters. In this story, it's actually implied that Lex died, and because Superman destroyed the machine that Lex is operating, and Luthor goes missing. It's actually kind of crazy how much things like this happen in the early appearances of characters like this. Although, to be fair, this was Earth 2 Superman, and Earth 2 rules, as we've seen in The Flash, are a little bit more dodgy than our normal rules. Obviously, Luthor didn't die, as he returned again and again over the next 80 years, leading to him becoming the Man of Steel's greatest nemesis. The Christopher Reeves movies were very much in line with what original Lex Luthor was like. This red-headed, evil, over-the-top genius who was constantly defeated and ends up in prison. But then, in his very next appearance, he starts off as him breaking out of prison. Superman Birthright, which is one of my all-time favorite Superman stories from 2004, gives a great look at Luthor, where him and Clark grew up as friends, and some of their childhood was spent with the two of them kind of bonding together. Lex was a weird kid that had a hard time making friends. He was always the smartest guy in the class, and he just wasn't very social in general. So Clark, being Clark, intervened and asked Lex over to his house for dinner and tried to befriend him. This obviously didn't last, and after an accident, Lex vows to never return to Smallville, and thus pretends like he never met Clark during the next time that Clark and Lex meet. And then during all of his subsequent appearances in the comic, Lex is like, Smallville? Never heard of it. Smallville, the TV show, offered a similar but insanely more detailed and deep origin for Lex. Someone who was really close friends with Clark for a decent part of their early years. The unexpectedness of meteor rocks and alien mysteries surrounding Smallville essentially drew Lex to madness. Constantly looking for ways to stop and kill aliens, it put him and Clark at odds. And it put them on the path that they're always destined to end up on. Honestly, Smallville has probably, in my opinion, the best version of Lex Luthor ever displayed on screen. And one of the best stories of Lex Luthor even in comics. If you're looking for good Lex Luthor related stories, Smallville is what you should watch because it's seriously crazy how much development Lex gets in that. But yeah, that's kind of just a quick rundown on who Lex Luthor is. It'll be really interesting to see what role he's playing in Supergirl because I can't see them making him do much considering he's such a big Superman villain. On top of that, we have so much to deal with this season. Maybe they're setting Lex up to be a villain next season, but at the same time, it feels like every character, every villain we've seen this season is being set up to be the villain next season. It's so hard to tell who the villain for this season is, but considering how deep we are in, I think it's safe to say Agent Liberty is the villain of the season, with maybe Red Son or Red Daughter Supergirl being the villain next season, with maybe Lex being a minor villain just down the line. But yeah, are you looking forward to Lex Luthor being in Supergirl? I sure am. But yeah, so I hope you have a great day.